Good afternoon and welcome to Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin. We are coming to you live from the gun store here in beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. This show is about guns, political issues related to that, and self-defense issues. Most of the politics stuff is over. We've got some legislation coming up and things to talk about, but today's show is going to be primarily on self-defense issues. My guest today is retired homicide detective Phil Ramos, here with me once again.
Glad to be here.
One of the, if you give a little bit of your background, just in case.
Well, I'm, like you said, I'm retired. I was a senior homicide investigator for Metro. Did 12 years in homicide, 33 years as a police officer, and do a little bit of private work here and there now. It's limited case kind of work, and had a pretty good career at Metro for many years, and glad to be retired in this day and age.
And very well known. I don't want to toot his horn for him, but he and his partner Jimmy Vaccaro had one of the highest solve rates in the entire country, and he was honored many times by many organizations for his ability to solve homicide cases. So that being said, a little disclaimer: there are several hundred firearms defensive uses in the United States every week, literally. I go through some that I can pick off here and there and pick them out for the usefulness to those of you who keep a gun in your house for defense or carry a concealed weapon, to let you put yourself in the position of the people we're talking about. Normally I don't use names and so forth in the stories, because it's important to me is what the bad guy did, what the good guy did in response, and whether that was a good thing or a bad thing, or how it could have been made a little bit better. If you follow along this, there's a gun website called ammoland.com that carries most of the stories I do on the air in a longer form, so you can read it there, or you can watch it on YouTube anytime. Fired Up with Bob Irwin on YouTube, and away we go. We're on radio also, of course. Drive time 5 to 6 in the afternoon on Thursdays. We are impossibly changing the time of that broadcast. We're negotiating with the station a little bit. So if you tune that in a week or two and we're not there, you can't find us if you don't know where it is on the radio. So you need to call the gun store and ask, where'd Bob show go? And they will tell you where we went. The other thing is, this is a nationwide show. When we talk about certain cases, we're generally, the guests and I are reflecting what would happen in Nevada if we did the same thing. The laws are vastly different from state to state. So advice we may give you in a case that happened in Nevada or in California, where we're more familiar with the laws, may be totally different result in New York. The point isn't what the law would do, but the point is what the person did and whether it worked out or not. I'm going to start out today with a local case. And this is kind of an updated report. Those of you who are in Southern Nevada are familiar with this case unfolding in the last several days. I'm going to read you a little bit of the press coverage, and then we're going to talk about this for a bit. This was reported by all local media. I used mostly a story from KSNV News 3 on this. On the 3rd of December, Metro Homicide began investigating the shooting that killed a teenager near Durango and Flamingo at a smoke shop in the Desert Breeze Plaza there. The preliminary information led investigators to believe that this may have been an attempted robbery involving 3 teens. Now, the shooting originally unfolded that way. We talked about it a little bit on last week's show, and I had a fairly lengthy interview on Channel 8 News here locally about it also. The update on the 7th, day before yesterday, the video inside the store, which has now been made available to investigators, originally they needed a code to get into it, and only the owner had the code to play it. So there's a lot of guesswork in the news coverage initially. Now the video apparently disagrees with some of the shooter's version of the events. The clerk is now been arrested for murder. The video surveillance from other businesses showed these three youth stopping outside the store, taking some cloth or hoodies or something out of their backpack and disguising their faces to some degree. The original report said they put on masks. Apparently that's kind of an exaggeration. They use some material to cover their faces a bit. They did that just before entering the business. Everybody seems to agree the three teens rushed into the store. So you picture in your mind that. We'll have the video at some point. But they began then stealing small items from a display of mostly head shop stuff. One would assume pipes and bongs and whatever, and sticking them in their backpack. The clerk was some distance away, yet to be determined, but apparently in no immediate physical danger. That's going to be an argument in the case. But he opened fire with a handgun. He fired a number of rounds. We're looking at maybe 8 at this point. The video showed, the original TV pictures showed the front of the store with lots of bullet holes in the glass door and the windows and so forth. That's all fixed now, so you can't go look. A 13-year-old who was one of the three in the store was hit with several rounds, apparently, one of them in the head. The two other teens escaped, ran out the door. They were taken into custody to a nearby pizza place around the corner or at the corner. The youth that was hit in the head was transported to a university medical center and died of his injuries. The employee at the smoke shop who fired came out, surrendered, put the gun down, and immediately requested an attorney, which is a wise move to anybody involved in any shooting. So that's good. Now, from all the supposition from the initial reports, and including my interviews with it earlier, I said, we really don't know what happened here, and the videotape will clear it up, and it has to a large degree. Now appears this is just a complex shoplifting incident. They were running in to do one of these, kids run in the store and grab stuff and run back out the door.
Snatch and grab.
Yeah, which is common all over now, unfortunately. Sometimes with mobs of kids. So the charges against the teenagers that were detained, the other two that didn't die, have been reduced to a misdemeanor theft case. And of course, if they're charged with a robbery, then we have a different defense situation. Was it unreasonable for the clerk to fire in self-defense, considering there were 3-to-1 odds? Can you tell 3 people you can't clearly see?
Disguised.
Yeah, disguised is the right word, I guess. Are they a physical threat? Well, they can be. It
very possible.
Depends on the distance.
Sure. Well, not only the distance, but their demeanor, whatever verbiage they may be using when they come in, how aggressive they are when they come in. In this case, it's going to boil down to what we call the reasonable person standard, and what that means in essence is, would a reasonable person fear for his life or feel an immediate threat to his personal safety, given the situation and the circumstances that this clerk was facing right now? So that's going to be probably the biggest burden of proof right now for the defense of the clerk and for the prosecution. There's that reasonable person standard. There's going to be one issue. The other issue, were these kids armed? That I think remains to be seen. The initial reports were that they were armed with some sort of blunt object. The videotape will clear that up. And the next thing is, there's going to be a lot made about the number of times this clerk fired, the distance from where he was to where these kids were when he fired, and did he fire unnecessarily after his perceived threat was over? that may or may not be an issue later on down the road, but it's some of the things that the investigators look at. But the primary thing that the investigators are going to look at are, where were these kids at the time that the clerk said he felt threatened and thought that he was going to be injured, and that's why he started firing. It's just going to be a difficult case on both sides. The videotape is going to clear up a lot of questions, but the biggest question that is going to be presented, in my view, is this clerk going to be able to articulate why he was in reasonable fear of immediate danger to himself? The state of mind of these kids, I don't think is going to be an issue, because the intent of them when they entered this store, their intent clearly was to commit some sort of theft.
Was, yeah, to steal something. And
So just by definition, the definition of a robbery is any person who enters any structure with the intent to commit grand or petty larceny or any other felony amounts to a robbery. That's going to be a charging decision that the district attorney's office is going to have to make, and in the long run, this is going to be a pretty complicated case, in my view.
And I have to agree. I mean, we've got just a lot of facts here. The reasonable person, would a reasonable person have done this, is something we look at. The problem is when you're the guy behind the counter and 3 people come charging in, how reasonable are you at that moment? We're looking at a compressed time of 2 to 3 seconds, perhaps, from the time they crash in the door to the time the shots are fired. And what does the clerk see? What is it reasonable for him to be able to ascertain? Can he see that they're kids? Can he see there's no weapons? We have the other problem we run into, and this whole thing is going to end up in front of a jury. I can see no way around it. With the facts they have so far, there's no way that the charging authorities, district attorney, or the homicide investigators cannot charge the clerk. This has to be heard by non-biased people in a courtroom at some point. Could, in this compressed state, the clerk sees people rushing in the door. When he goes and begins to fire his gun, we have a time delay that we'll see on the videotape. From the time that you perceive the threat, you've got your gun pointed, and from the time you perceive the threat and your brain says, that's a threat, I may be hurt, fire gun, and signal goes down your arm to your finger, and you fire the gun. We're dealing with an elapsed time of about 1 second with fairly agile young people. I've worked cases with elderly victims where that's 7 or 8 seconds, but like myself. But there's a time delay from the perception until the time the shot actually launches, and that would seem to be not much. But here's the kicker: is the person on the other side, when they see the gun coming up, tend to react like a schoolyard fight and turn as if getting shot in the back won't hurt. It's left over from being punched in the nose. You don't want to be punched in the nose, so you turn. So there have been a lot of tests done by agencies defending police officers, because this is always the thing: the officer shot the guy in the back. And we have shown over and over again that the person can turn a 180 in about 8 thousandths or 8 100ths of a second. 0.8 seconds is what I'm looking for. The average agile person. The guy firing the shot, it takes about 1 second for him to get the shot off. So you can actually fire when your brain says the guy's facing me, and by the time the shot actually gets off and the bullet gets there, which is a millisecond, the guy's turned around. And I'm sure you investigated police shootings where the officer says, no, the guy was facing me when I fired, and yet the bullet hits the guy in the back. This is one of the original research things that was done when we started looking into why police are shooting all these people in the back. And what we discovered is they're not. they're normally shooting them in the front. Now, they have shot them in the back on occasion. We've all seen the videotape recently of a guy doing that. But we're not dealing with criminal elements and people trying to set up the crime scene. It's entirely possible that when he fired, he was being reasonable for what he saw happening. And yet it still turns out to be wrong with 20/20 hindsight. Of course. Can you make mistakes? Mistakes aren't murders. Mistakes are voluntary manslaughter or whatever.
Yeah.
The kid is apparently, the shooter is a straight citizen with no criminal history. The bad guy, the kid, is not really a bad guy. He's a rambunctious kid, according to his father. Yeah, he did a lot of stupid stuff, but is running into the store and stealing stuff something you should get killed over? No, it's not. And that's why I think this will go to a jury. The DA has to go on the case, and the attorney that is handling the defense, a fellow I've worked with before named Dominic Gentile. Some of you may be familiar with. I have been engaged as an expert on this case, and you know, I almost said defense expert. I'm not. I'm a truth expert.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
When experts, Phil or myself, look at a case, what we're trying to do is find the truth. You know, and we're not hired guns. There are such people who
Right.
try to prove, you know, their client was innocent or guilty or whatever. But with most of us who are honest, the chips fall where they may. And right now we have opinions. We've been talking for a half hour before we went on the air about this, and we have opinions that disagree so far. But we do agree on one thing: the videotape is going to show what happened.
Yeah.
How you interpret whether that was reasonable is going to be the issue that needs to go to a jury.
Yeah, and on the surface, when this case first came out, you know, for the following several days, it was clerk shoots suspects during robbery attempt, and we've all seen, you know, the convenience store clerks behind the counter when thugs walk in and they're pointing a gun and they got a mask on it, they got a bat, and there's no question what the intent there is, and there's no question what the clerk or a reasonable person is going to perceive. In other words, you know, everybody's going to know if you're standing behind the counter at 7-Eleven or whatever convenience store you're at, and some knuckleheads come in, they got a gun and they're yelling, you're pointing a gun at your head. Yeah, that's reasonable fear. If you're able to, you draw your gun and you defend yourself, stop the threat. The difference here is the perception of that threat. Now, you got three individuals. They were young teenagers, but their faces were disguised to the point where it's going to be very difficult for this person to determine that, you know, hey, these are, you know, barely pubescent teenagers versus 20-somethings. And, you know, not that that should make a difference, but in the long run, one is expected to determine, or you put in your brain is a little pimple-faced kid capable of committing an armed robbery. In some places, yeah, they are. Are they more likely to go in and grab a soda pop and a bag of potato chips and run out the door? Yeah, that's usually what's going to happen in that specific age group, but that's not the case here.
And that Phil brought up another interesting point. You know, if he can perceive, if we're back to just general, not this case, because we don't know these kids had a gun and nobody's been suggesting at this point they had a firearm. But back when I was teaching police academies in my misspent youth, one of the things we would always run recruits through was a scenario that says, you know, you have a guy who did something wrong and you're chasing him, and he's a 14-year-old kid. And he runs down an alleyway, you chase him down the alleyway. Turns out it's a blind alleyway, no exit. He turns, pulls a pistol, and starts to fire at you. You have no cover to duck. You're just stuck in between these two walls. What do you do? And the recruits would commonly say, well, I kneel down to make myself small. I tried to back up. I would warn him to put the gun down. I would turn and run. Very few of them came up with the correct answer. And the correct answer to that scenario is go home to your family alive. shoot your gun. I'm not advocating shooting a 14-year-old, but a 14-year-old is trying to kill you and you have no other options. The officers that I trained, I like to see them go home at night.
Yeah, and we have a perfect example of that just happened yesterday up in Reno. Yesterday, the day before, you got a couple of kids getting a fight at a high school up in Reno, and one of the kids turns out and produces two big, long knives, and he's just flailing and threatening people and carrying on like some idiot. And he's got two very long butcher-type knives that he was using to fight this other kid with. And then the cops come, and the cops are trying to get him to stop. And they know they're at a high school. They know that these are teenagers. The officers know that this isn't some 30-something hardened criminal, but there is a definite, clear, and immediate danger not only to the officers but to the knucklehead teenage kids who are standing there with their phones videotaping this threat, and instead of running to protect themselves, oh no, let's get this on YouTube, man. We got to put this on YouTube, and there's a life-threatening situation there. And sadly, the officer had to shoot this kid because he wouldn't comply, and that's what happened. That was it. That was the case. That is clearly, everything's on videotape. The officer warned this kid several times, and for some reason, this kid was just acting like a fool with these knives and slashing at people. In that particular case, the officer had no choice. The kid didn't comply, and the officer had to protect the other students and himself, and he had to take that one shot to stop the threat. Versus what this clerk, there was no issue on the case I'm talking about just now up in Reno. There's no issue at all if there was a clear and immediate threat. There absolutely was. And there was a failure to comply with the police officer's commands to end the threat, so the officer had to shoot. In this case, very ambiguous yeah. in my view.
And the police are a little bit different because the police have to intervene when lives are in danger and there's a crime in front of them and so forth. If there was a backdoor, this clerk if there was a backdoor, which we don't know, had a way out from not getting harmed by running out the back door. So the police don't have that choice. When bad things happen, we don't tell the police first, run away, and then call the police. They can't run away because they are the police, and it's actually a crime if they run away, gross misdemeanor if they run away. So the issues are different for a police officer confronting this guy, civilian victims. If there's a way to get away, that's what we recommend. And then we get into the debate of, we are a stand your ground state.
Yeah.
Does he have to run away? No, he doesn't. We run into that all the time in these instances. If you have opportunity to run away, run away. However this case comes out, this young man that was the clerk, his life is ruined. Where's he going to be in another year?
Yeah.
Working at a different store? No. I mean, this is never going to go away.
And that's one of those issues that we talk about all the time on this show is if you are in a situation where you are clearly justified in defending yourself or your family, and you have to make that decision to fire your weapon, nobody thinks at that time, because you're busy thinking about protecting yourself and your family, the consequences of your actions. You're going to take a human life. Likely, you're going to take a human life, and you have to live with that for the rest of your life. So, and that happens to many, many police officers who are involved in officer-involved shootings, fatal or not fatal. They had to make that decision to fire their weapon with the intent to stop that threat. And many times the result of that is the death of another human being. That's a hard thing to live with, man. I'm telling you, I've seen so many officers who just can't finish their career or have to change their assignments and take different positions in the police department because it's such a traumatic thing for them that they've actually, as justified as they can be, had to take a human life, man. It's a hard thing to do.
It's incredibly tough. I've told people in the past, I've probably interviewed close to 100 people now that have killed somebody with gunfire, not counting military, just police that shot somebody, or security guards, or homeowners that shot burglars, or ladies that shot rapists and things like that. I've never had one of them go, oh, I'm really glad that guy's dead.
Yeah.
It is a horrible experience to go through. If you know somebody that's killed somebody and they're not upset about it, get away from them. You're dealing with a sociopath.
Yeah.
We'll leave that for more information. Next week, I've got a murder defense attorney on, Clark Patrick, and we'll have a lot more details on this. And you can bet we're going to hit this case again next week with updates. I'm going to go to number 9 for a moment. This is the next episode, because this was a convenience store robbery that was carried in Fresno, California. It was carried by the Daily Mail in London. For whatever reason, I found no local coverage of it at all. Only the British coverage. Maybe the Daily Mail doesn't like Americans and guns, but I'll read it to you. This is on 12/1 in Fresno, California. A few days earlier, 2 robbery suspects, that's the date of the story. I'm sorry, it was 12/1. A few days earlier, 2 robbery suspects entered a Fresno convenience store just before 2 in the morning. Surveillance footage from the store shows a man brandishing a rifle and walking into the store, followed by a woman. Police say the male then demanded money as the woman stood in the doorway. The cashier at the store opened fire on the male suspect, who was pointing the rifle at the clerk. As the intended victim fired around, the couple can be seen on the video quickly turning and fleeing on foot. Fresno police are now trying to identify the suspects. They fled on foot towards the nearby Ashmark Arms apartment complex, which we all know where that is in Fresno, I guess. Following the attempted robbery, authorities, now this is a British newspaper, authorities have described the male suspect as approximately 25 years old with an assault rifle. The British press don't like American guns, but no. And God knows if it was really what we even loosely would term an assault rifle. But in any case, they had to throw that in. Here's a clerk in a 7-Eleven, similar case. 2 people come in this case. They're adults, but they're clearly pointing a gun, a rifle, an evil assault rifle perhaps, at the guy behind the counter, who, instead of ducking or running out the back door, fires. Sure, was his life in danger? Sure. The bad guy had a military type rifle of some sort, they believe. Can he fire? Sure. There's precious little difference between this one and the one we just talked about, but the small issues are huge.
Yeah.
They are. Clear gun, clear threat. This clerk, I didn't carry the name of the convenience store chain in Fresno, and I generally won't, but this is one of those chains where company policy says clerks and employees are not armed. So he had his gun anyway, probably saved his own life, which would probably get him fired. If he hadn't saved his own life, he wouldn't be fired, but he'd be dead.
He'd be dead.
So I choose between the two. Lose my job, lose my life, A, B, you know.
Be alive to go find another job.
Yeah, there are too many places that have this defense is prohibited issue, gun-free zones. I hate that. The signs that say on the front of stores that say no weapons allowed, the customers read that and don't bring in their weapons or don't shop there, which is what I would suggest. If you have a CCW, go somewhere else. But to the bad guys, it says rob here without risk. Doesn't say no guns allowed. It says no armed victims. And I had to put a note in here because it's British press. We'll probably see another thing in the British press that said possession of this military rifle caused the guy to go crazy and try and rob the store because he had this military rifle.
Because he had the ability to be like a soldier.
So what? I got to do something. Yeah. I'll rob this store because I have this gun. The gun made him do it. There was I didn't write it down, but there was a story in the RJ a few days ago about a assessment of suicides. Mm-hmm. and that most commonly suicides are done with firearms where they're available.
Yeah.
And the guys are writing it are academics, and they're looking at suicide rates where people have guns freely and people don't have guns freely. And the statistics are about the same.
Yeah.
If they don't have guns, they kill themselves some other way. But one line stuck out, and I meant to put it in my outline, where one of the professors said, the majority of suicides, meaning 51%, are caused by firearms. That's an exact quote.
What?
He said the majority of suicides are caused by firearms.
I don't get that. What he was trying to say that the majority of
He meant
suicides.
they wouldn't have happened if there was no firearm, which is incorrect.
No, that's not true.
But his wording was exactly that. The majority of suicides are caused by firearms. Be careful if you have a firearm in your home; it might shoot you someday. If you want to probably lock it in a case
Well,
that it can't get out of.
yeah, and as we all
Sorry.
know, if a person is made up their mind that they're gonna goodbye cruel world, it doesn't matter whether they have a gun or not. They're gonna find a way to do it. I've investigated hundreds of suicides, and the majority of them involved a weapon, but there are very many, a very high percentage that are intentional overdoses, or jumping in front of a train, hanging yourself in the garage. There's several different ways besides the use of a handgun or a rifle, where people who decided to commit suicide actually go through with it and commit suicide in ways where guns aren't available. They'll find another way to do it.
They generally do. I'll never forget, we had a guy here years and years ago turned down on a gun purchase back when we had 3-day waits, and we weren't doing background checks, but he had to do a 3-day wait, and we told him he couldn't have the gun today. He'd have to come back in 3 days to do that. That was a cooling off period so people wouldn't do bad things. And that night he went home, he went and bought a ball-peen hammer from a hardware store and killed his wife and one child and injured the other one by smacking him in the head, but the other one didn't die. And then he jumped off the roof at one of the hotels on the Strip. I forget which one. One he worked at, had worked at previously. So stopping him from buying a gun actually probably cost lives, because the kids, he hit mom first with the hammer. The kids would have been awake anyway to hear and realize something was wrong. We're supposing way out there, but people who want to kill themselves generally find a way. And I'm one of those that shouldn't be against the law, in my view, that it's your life, but that's a whole other issue. But anyway, guns don't cause suicides. They're sometimes the tool of a suicide, often the tool of a suicide. I may point out just one stat. Japan has a much, much higher suicide rate than we do in the United States, and it's like 4-to-1, and have virtually no guns. So it's society. Anyway, a couple more stories here. We're about 30 minutes in. This is from KTUL TV 8, which is ABC, and a little bit from News 1 TV 6. This is in Oklahoma, 11/19. According to police, a woman returned to her apartment near North Peoria and East 36th Street around 9:30 p.m. to find a man inside her home. Apparently, that was a surprise. Detectives said the woman was on the phone with 911 when she shot the man who had broken into her apartment in Comanche Park Apartments near 36th Street and North and Peoria. The man was transported to the hospital in serious injuries, but unknown condition. The investigation is ongoing and no one's been arrested. This is simply a lady who came home and at 9:30 at night when she normally gets off work, and found an intruder in her house. She was able to keep the guy talking apparently long enough to get on the phone and get her gun. So she called 911 and asked for a police car, etc. And then the guy tried to grab the phone apparently, and she shot him. So she was able, this is really nice if you can do it. She was able to create that unbiased witness at the Tulsa Police Department by calling 911, having the phone in her hand, and shooting the guy with the other hand. So the warnings are there. I'm calling the police, and yet the moron still is there. I did look this up because when I ran the story, I lost it, and I looked it up again, and through a website that went to the Comanche Arms Apartments and Condos, which is where in Tulsa where this took place, and found a large number of shootings over the last several years, and a few deaths from those shootings. As a place to live, it rated 2 out of 5 stars. Probably she needs to find another place to live. When you rent an apartment someplace, look them up online, and you can do that with Metro and see what the crime rate is in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, the internet will provide you with all kinds of crime statistics in your neighborhood or the neighborhood you want to go visit. Where, say you have some friends or relatives that are living in an area, you want to look up crime statistics. It's all there. It's all there. You can look it up.
I want to mention my 3-second commercial for the gun store where we're coming from. We offer free concealed carry permit classes every Monday, every Wednesday, and every Saturday. You only have to go to one of those. All-day class, you can find them on our website. If you want to get a permit to carry concealed, the class is basically free. The Metro charges $97 or something to get the permit for the fingerprints, whatever. Go to our website, thegunstorelasvegas.com, and you can sign up online. We generally have 35 or 40 people in the class. We hold 50 in the classroom. You may just show up at 8:45. Recommend you sign up online is better. We haven't turned anybody away yet, but if there are more headlines about more home invasions in Las Vegas, we have those, Phil.
Yeah, we do.
Then our classes get more full. And it's good if you just want to keep a gun in your house to learn the rules so you don't do something dumb like this original clerk we're talking about that's going to be a questionable shooting and destroy his life. Another convenience store. Dayton Daily News on the 21st of November, Dayton, Ohio, an attempted armed robbery is reported at 11:15 p.m. Sunday night at a Sunoco convenience store on Wayne Avenue in Dayton. 911 records indicate a masked man entered the store, displayed a gun, and attempted to rob the clerk. The suspect fired 1 or 2 rounds. A second clerk fired several shots back at the suspect, and the suspect fled on foot out the door toward Wyoming Street. Dayton police say the targeted clerk suffered a gunshot wound to the upper right thigh. The second clerk who returned fire was not hit, but caused the robber to flee the store on foot. The clerk who was shot has been treated and released. It was unknown if the robber was hit. Find him. Yeah, this is described as unknown, age, wearing a black hoodie, dark jeans, white gloves, and a surgical mask. Okay, if you see him running around Dayton, it's only a couple weeks later, so maybe you can get him. Firearms save lives again. This is a perfect defense of others shooting. Apparently, the bad guy didn't realize there were 2 clerks. He fired at one. The second clerk fired back. Can he do that to save the other guy's life? Certainly. Absolutely. You can fire in defense of others. The report said the clerk who shot back had a valid CCW permit. That really doesn't matter. I'm not sure the law in Ohio, but most places you can have a gun behind the counter of your own place of business, or you have the owner's permission. You don't need a permit to do that. What it does show is he had training, which indicates that maybe that's why he was able to hit the guy. And he was hit because they found blood, but weren't able to follow it. So,
and that brings up a good point. That
another clerk
too. If you are going to go get a CCW, which anybody who does get a CCW, please don't make it a one and done training situation. Once you get that CCW permit, make yourself absolutely proficient with that firearm, because if you ever have to use it, it's got to be second nature to do it. You can't go to your CCW class, get it done, get the permit, get your gun, and stick it under the bed and never touch it again. Please don't do that. get familiar enough with that gun so that when you have to use it, God forbid, but you're going to hit what you're aiming at. Otherwise, it could be a detriment to yourself and your family that you're trying to protect.
A good point. I mean, the control group there for statistics is police officers.
Mm-hmm.
And we make them practice, and depending on where they are, they shoot the guns every 6 months or every 3 months, in different scenarios, and practice with their shotguns or their rifles or whatever, and get classroom training on use of force updates. Every time they go on patrol, there's somebody at the meeting they're being with to tell them what crimes to look out for, and throws in some training aid, do this, do that, your reports suck, make sure you put this in it, They get constant training in use of force and constant practice with their firearms. And in real life, they shoot about half as well as they shoot on the firing range.
Yeah, and people often ask, well, why do you have to shoot 10 times? Why couldn't you just shoot once? Well, when you're engaged, when you're in a firefight and someone is shooting back at you, it's not as easy as it is in the range. You're in a pristine situation. There's no real threat coming at you. You're shooting at a paper target or, a rolling video in a shoot, don't shoot situation. When that situation is developed into real life scenarios and someone's pointing a gun at you and firing at you, you revert to your training and your instincts and whatever you remember doing hundreds of times while you're training, you're going to do. So that's why, there's a difference between how good you shoot at the range versus how you're going to do in a real life firefight.
In real life, nothing works as well. That's why you need to practice. So you can fire your gun without looking at it. Keep your eyes uprange. Don't look down to reload, et cetera, et cetera. I yell at the TV every time I see a cop show, and they get the guy handcuffed, or there's a fight and the officer goes to engage in the fight and help, and he looks down at his holster to put his gun away. Drives me crazy. Keep your eye on the bad guy. If you got to try and find your holster 15 times, keep your eyes where the threat is. Trying to see what else I want. Oh, One Stop Food Mart. Here we go. I'm trying to just get into convenience stores on today's show, so I'm skipping around. This is number 5. WPMI TV Local 15 News in Mobile, Alabama reported on the 29th of November an incident at 7 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day. The suspects entered the One Stop Food Market and attempted to steal some beer. That was successful, and he ran to a waiting getaway car. Mobile Police reported that the 43-year-old owner of the convenience store shot at the alleged thieves while they were driving out of his parking lot. Oops. Police noted the suspect's thieves did not have any weapons when they were in the car attempting to leave the store when the owner fired multiple shots. The 20-year-old driver of the car was shot in the shoulder by the gunfire. He wasn't the one that actually went inside to steal the beer. Police are still searching for the second suspect who actually stole the beer, but he ran off and left his partner. I wonder if he took the beer with him. Both men are obviously equally culpable in the crime. Again, it's misdemeanor theft. Just what we're talking about in the opening thing. The store owner is now facing 2 felony charges of second-degree assault. He's out of jail on bond. Now, this is, again, different from our first story because here the guys were actually outside the store driving away and the guy firing at their car. Now, clearly, we've got a different scenario here.
Yeah.
It isn't they were still turning, so I fired my gun. The MPD spokesman, Terrence Perkins, said if this person had a weapon, you have a right to defend yourself, but committing a theft, we discourage deadly force. We discourage any business owner from chasing someone from behind, exiting the store, and actually firing into a vehicle. This could have been a deadly situation. Yeah, if he'd have killed the guy, and it wasn't even the guy that stole the beer, would he be charged with murder? Sure. Folks living in the community, and this may play into our story too. Had mixed feelings about what the owner did. One was quoted, where they can write into the news. The news station has a thing where you can put comments to their stories on, kind of like the rant, but the people put them on themselves. One said, "I feel that it's sad it happened like that, but stop stealing. Just do it. Stop stealing," said a frequent customer. Another said, "It's a lot of stealing going on, but you do not have the right to shoot somebody." Those two quotes you're going to hear in this case.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to put up with teenagers or anybody walking in and taking your stuff. It's a national problem everywhere.
It is.
And I wrote in my comments on the column that goes out on Amazon, we can all understand the owner victim's frustration. This is a grab and run crime that's happening all over the country. Occasionally there become large groups organized on cell phones just moments before the event. The "I have a right to your stuff" generation is everywhere. Solutions, that's why I have Phil here to offer solutions. We look at things for stores like doors that automatically lock when they're shut. You have to buzz. It locks them in or locks them out. That's kind of expensive. Pepper spray and tasers, of course, non-lethal devices, great solution. And gunfire if you are physically in danger. And videotape everything. I mean, this I wrote before this case. Videotape everything so the jury will understand what was happening. Mob rule in America, editorial comment here from me, can be stopped by force and boot camp education. Those programs seem to work to change attitudes to some degree. I think if this continues and we don't change that, our society will be basically destroyed. I don't know. You think boot camps?
Well, it depends on the person. Their psyche and why they're going out and acting fool in the first place. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Just like going to prison, some people come out fully rehabilitated, others can't wait to go out and commit a crime. So it's really up to the individual and how they receive the corrective instruction that they might be receiving. But the thing that we're seeing in this day and age on both aspects of this particular case is the sense of entitlement and I can go in there and do that. The kids are becoming much more emboldened to go commit these petty crimes because they think it's okay, and they think, well, what's the big deal? We're just going in there to steal some potato chips and soda pop and an occasional beer. And that's becoming more prevalent. On the other side of that, the clerks and the store owners and the people who are being victimized by these kids are becoming more emboldened, as we've been talking about, to defend themselves, whether their lives are in danger or not. And that's the key issue here. Your life has to be in danger, or you perceive that your life is in danger before you can take that kind of action, or else you're going to face some pretty severe consequences, as we're seeing right now. So my concern overall is that this gap between these knucklehead kids who are doing the stupid things and the people who are sick of these knucklehead kids doing the stupid things are reacting at times too much to this misdemeanor event versus the clerks who are going to videotape it, call the cops and say we're being robbed right now, or whatever the incident is. It's troubling to me to see how big that gap is becoming and how young the kids are that are being involved in these crimes. Like we're talking about, a 13-year-old kid's dead now because he wanted to go in there and do a snatch and grab.
And they grow. Regular listeners, anybody who's lived in the United States for a year or two, remembers that the Ferguson case, where police did intervene because a guy called and said, I was just strong-arm robber, that ended up in all the misunderstanding, all the rioting, a dead 17-year-old who tried to attack a cop. It's the same thing. That started as one of these idiot,
right.
I'm taking your stuff because I can. And, you know, that police officer just wrong place, wrong time, and saved his own life, and now is dead. You know what? I know we've got to put some commercials in this when we're taping early, so let me go down to the end of show stuff for a second here. Gun shows. We've got a gun show currently going on. Going on this weekend. The Claude Hall Gun Show. It's at the Sports Center up the road from the gun store. I will try and be there Saturday afternoon if you want to talk to me about something individually. We don't have a table there. I'll be sitting with the NRA guys and talking about CCW classes. But if you have something that you want to bring up, you don't want to put on the phone when you call in or in an email to me, that's fine. I'd be happy to see you person to person. Currently, Rocky Mountain Gun Show Company is running a show at the World Trade Center attached to the Cowboy Christmas thing. The show is at 4725 South Grand Central Parkway, the World Market Center where the furniture thing is downtown. It started today and it's on through Sunday, the 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th. It's a 4-day show. Lots of vendors are selling lots of things, and a gun show is part of that. So that's open today if you want to go look at it. We've got a table in there handing out some training stuff for people. And then on the 17th and 18th, we have Crossroads of the West show at Cashman Field Center, which is on Washington, Las Vegas Boulevard. We'll hit that. That was not for a couple weeks. I do still have some free passes for the Crossroads show at Cashman. If you want to send me an email at bob@firedupmail.com, I will get you a pass to go to that. We'll be back next week again on KSHP radio, but I'm not sure what time. And on YouTube, which is always up there at Fired Up with Bob Irwin. Next week, I've got murder defense specialist Clark Patrick on. And as I said earlier, we'll have more information on this shooting we're following. Be interesting to see a defense attorney look at this and go, wow, I can't imagine. Of course, we'll know more than we know now. And anyway, thanks for listening and watching on YouTube. I appreciate that. We're at about 53 minutes now. So probably that's enough to get the tape in, because the radio guy is taping this for broadcast tonight, and he's going to have to stick commercials and things. Right. So Alan, our savior down there at KSHP. Shopping Channel is there. It's got a lot of good stuff. If you haven't listened to the Shopping Channel itself, they have all kinds of freebies and giveaways, and it's kind of like a mall on radio. They have all kinds of deals on stuff from businesses all over town here. So you might listen in a little bit. You can call in and bid and get half price tickets to almost everything. We've got some packages on there now for the gun store for a lady self-defense class, I think, and whatever. You can buy them online. Save money by doing that. Phil, I thank you for being here. Always a pleasure. So much. This is, boy, this first case is going to be
interesting.
Going to be a lot.
Yeah.
I may, I don't know how your time is, but I may have you sit in next week if you can do it just when Clark's here, just looking at depending on what happens in this case. If we got anything definitive that we can look at and go, wow, that would be cool. Justin, thank you for entertaining us again, our engineer. We'll be back next week, and you all have a great afternoon.
Take care.